So welcome to our third Roadmap to Recovery workshop in Napa County. And my name is Amy Bach, and I am the co-founder and executive director of United Policyholders. I'm not going to advertise for Starbucks here, so okay. So United Policyholders, how many of you, by a show of hands, were at either of the other two workshops we've done in Napa? Okay. And how many of you have gone to any of the Sonoma workshops? Okay, my arch intrepid Carol and partner. Okay. So first I wanted to thank your local elected officials, Supervisor Diane Dillon, Alfredo Pedroza, who'll be joining us a little later, and then Supervisor Wakiconnect, I'm sure I might that, and Supervisor Ramos. Okay, so I will say this about the North Bay communities that have been hit so hard by the fires last fall. Your elected officials are really playing well together, it feels like to us, as a nonprofit that goes around to different communities and helps people get back on their feet and offers these workshops and all the services that we offer. So I've seen communities where folks are not getting along real well, and it really does impede the recovery, and that is not the case here. I think you guys should have some comfort, I hope, in knowing that certainly your government officials are pulling so hard for you. So before we get into the program, I'm just going to quickly review. We've got two meaty speakers tonight that are going to be talking about important financial issues. We've got Diane's going to give you a couple of pieces of information. I'm going to give you some information. Joel Loucher with the California Department of Insurance is going to give you some information. And then we are going to have Linda Lubitz-Boone, who's a wealth advisor, certified financial planner. And then we have Mike Musson, who's a certified public accountant, CPA, who happened to have, unfortunately, is right there with you, having lost his home. So he's kind of got the double status. I don't know if you know how you feel about that. Status, fraternity, whatever it is. Here you are. Thank you for taking the time to come out. I think now that we found this venue, I think we'll probably do another workshop here, just because we try not to bounce around so much. We try to find a place that makes it easy for y'all to find it. So I'm glad you all did find it. And I want to thank our staff attorney, Dan Wade, here at the helm, and then Lewis, who is videotaping. And just like last time, we will be putting the video up on our website, uphelp.org, and we will also be putting the slides that the two, as I call them, meaty speakers, Linda and Mike's slides will also be up on our website. Okay, so about UP, United Policyholders is a not-for-profit charity. That means we're a 501c3. That means that we are not selling you anything. We are here to educate you, and then we advocate for you as well. And we consider all of you are policyholders, which is just a fancy word for people who have bought insurance. We are funded by donations and grants, not insurance companies. The Napa Valley Community Foundation funded our first 3 workshops, and we're hoping they're going to stay the course with us. Our online information is all free of charge. Our team includes volunteers from prior disasters and knowledgeable consumer-oriented experts. And by now, because of where you all are in your insurance claims, you know that some of the folks that come out that get sent by your insurance company to inspect or to work with you, you can tell that they work for insurance companies. You can just tell by the way they approach the situation. And the folks that generally work with us, that volunteer with us, are people that typically don't work for insurance companies. Not that there's anything bad, many of them will go both ways, but there tends to be those experts that do mostly work for insurance companies, and then there are experts who do mostly work on the consumer side, or on the homeowner side, or on the business owner side. And a lot of our volunteers come from that sector. They just like to call balls and strikes down the line as they see them. Okay, you can learn more about our work at uphelp.org. So fine print, the information you're going to hear tonight is intended for general educational purposes only. It should not be construed as legal or financial advice. The speakers at tonight's program are volunteering their time as educators, and we don't endorse or warrant the quality or services of anyone we have as a speaker. We do our best to bring people to you that are going to give you useful information and not sales pitches. And so, we do our best to make sure that the information you're going to be getting is reliable. So I really want to thank our volunteers for making the time to come up and come out. Okay, next speaker. Oh yeah, okay, Dan, did you want to give a quick announcement?
Sure, thank you. So one of the other services that we're offering here in the North Bay are individual consultations in the form of a legal clinic. We're pleased to partner with Bay Area Legal Aid. Christy from Bay Area Legal Aid is here. And we are going to be doing one of these clinics at Bay Legal's Napa office. The address is there, 575 Lincoln, on March 24th. It's going to be from approximately 10 to 2. At 10 o'clock, I'll be giving an overview presentation of your legal rights and the rules that apply to your claim. And then from 10:30 to about 2, depending on turnout, we will have people scheduled for half-hour blocks with volunteer pro bono insurance, consumer-oriented insurance attorneys. If you want to schedule an appointment, please send me an email. The email address is there. It's dan.wade@uphelp.org. And you can come see me afterwards as well. Thanks.
Okay, so we just this week opened a survey. It's an online survey, and it's for both Sonoma and Napa. Actually, it's for all the impacted counties, so it'll include Mendocino. We are conducting the survey in partnership with Napa County and Sonoma County, and also our partners in the various, what are called VOAD, the different other nonprofits that are involved in helping with the recovery. And so I'm asking that every one of you write that survey link down and please take the survey. We will be sending a follow-up email. How many of you have gotten an email from us? Oh, that's not good. Okay, well hopefully you all signed in, and we will do our best to do better and get emails to all of you, because we will be giving you the link to the survey. So when we do these surveys and we leave them open for a while, they're part of this roadmap to recovery work that we do. They're very important because we use them to take your temperature, basically. Take the temperature of how are the insurance companies doing, where are people in their, how far along are people in getting settlements, which insurance companies are relaxing some of the rules, which insurance companies are paying advances without requiring a whole lot of details, and which ones aren't, and that sort of thing. And then when we get the results, we tally them up, and then we share them with the Department of Insurance, we share them with the press, and it often has been a real driver for improvements. So when the insurance companies, read in the paper the results, that tends to get them to sometimes be a little more responsive and pay out the dollars a little faster, that kind of thing. And it also helps educate elected officials about where some of the snags are in the recovery process that we need to fix. So please do take the survey, and then you'll be entered for a chance to win $25. Again, special thanks to our donors and sponsors, our partners, St. John the Baptist Church, York County, Mosaic Financial Partners, our friend Norm Boom, who arranged for us to get our CFP speaker tonight. These are our tools. You got our yellow book, which we have copies of if you didn't get one. That picture there is the, we offer a personal property inventory app that's free. on Google Play and at the App Store. And you can use it if you're struggling with getting pricing for items, and you can even use it if you're somewhat tech savvy. You can use it to create an inventory. How many of you have tried to use our spreadsheet that we have on our website? Anybody? Okay, well, there's a lot of stuff floating around out there, but we do offer 2 free spreadsheets for doing your inventory. We have an Excel spreadsheet and we have a sample completed one, in addition to this online tool. Okay? And then 24/7 on the web, our website, we got some lovely compliments from a young gentleman whose mother identified him as being techie. So I take a compliment from a young techie about our website extra to heart. So yeah, we've got sample letters, videos of past workshops, links to professional help and all that at our website. Okay, so before I go into the questions we're going to be talking about tonight, I want to bring Supervisor Diane Dillon up just to give us a few pointers about resources that Napa County is offering to you related to replacing your dwelling and related. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for being here. And hello, everyone. On behalf of Napa County, again, let us express our sadness for what all of you have experienced and your loss. And I'm delighted that my colleagues, if they're still here, Supervisor Wagon Connect and Supervisor Ramos joined us tonight. It's just nice to have them here. And Supervisor Pedroza is going to join us in a little while. And we have Carrie Whitney, who is the head of our emergency services and risk manager. Carrie, stand up. And Carrie has cards. And he's the guy to go see if you can't get to anyone else. But all 5 of your supervisorial representatives are here to help you and demonstrating that by being here tonight. I think Supervisor Wagon Connect lost 3 structures in his supervisor district, but his mother lived in one of them. And Supervisor Ramos, 8 or less than 20 or 13. But Supervisor Ramos is taking the lead on working on how we do better, not just in our county, but statewide with emergency alert systems. Supervisor Pedroza is working on how we do better with the process that we're going through with testing, which I know some of you are experiencing with the soils and getting your properties back to the rebuild stage. I'm working on the aspects of disaster resilience with the state. Spent 2 days in Sacramento last week on that issue and how we plan to handle these situations better in the future. The next one, of course, being the earthquake. But right now, what we're really focused on is trying to help all of you, and our focus as a county and having these county representatives here, I hope demonstrates that, as we're trying to be a pillar of stability for all of you, a place where you can go to get help, get answers, and if we don't have them when you call or write, we will work on getting them. And I'm really proud that we could bring Amy and United policyholders here to Napa. They've done a lot more workshops in Santa Rosa, but as we know, there's been a much greater loss over there and a lot bigger demand. So we're happy that you've been here 3 times, and I'll work on getting you support for the 4th one. I'm also standing in as John Tudor tonight. Some of you may know him as our county assessor and recorder, and John unfortunately couldn't be here. But what I'm holding in my hand is a handout that all of you should have received. It's 2 pages. Well, it's 2 handouts really, but we printed them on 1 piece of paper. And the information on here is something which I didn't know existed until this calamity, and that is the ability to move your tax assessment value to a new residence. So if your home burned and you don't intend to rebuild, you can go out and buy another residence for up to 120% of the value of your burned residence. There are only 10 counties where you can do this, but you can do it in our county, you can do it in Sonoma, and they're listed on here. And the details of that are listed here as well. My point is just to make you aware of your ability to do this. And then there are criteria for when you do rebuild, how you retain the assessment that you had. And basically, if you rebuild a structure very much like the structure you had before and the same size and the same type, and I'm generalizing here because all of you, before you rebuild, should go check in with John to get the download regarding your particular property. But you will not be reassessed. If you build a home, rebuild, and your home is much larger than the home you had before, you will be subject to reassessment, but only on the difference in the size and quality. So that's the soundbite, but it's a lot deeper than that. Just wanted to alert you to that aspect of opportunity, if you will. You can move the side of your home on your property, but how much you move it sort of depends on whether you trigger reassessment. There's a number of factors. So go and make an appointment with John or call him. He's readily available to explore that before you make a final decision about rebuilding. And with regard to rebuilding, the other message that I'm here to deliver tonight is that we are trying to help you in that regard. We've passed some resolutions at the Board of Supervisors to help make it easier. We have funded new positions at the Planning Department to make it easier. We have given direction to staff to reduce building, come back to us with an ordinance to reduce building fees. So we're trying to do what we can to help folks. And if you go to the main county website, coincidentally, we changed our county website. We totally went to a new one. That had been in the works for 3 years, but that happened in December. So there's been a few hiccups. But if you go to the main page of the county website, on the right-hand side, it says Fire Recovery. You click on that, and you go to a page where we are putting up, almost weekly, there's a change there. We are updating our frequently asked questions, FAQs. We're putting things like this handout that John Tudor has are available there. There's a lot of information. Not as much information as is available at unitedpolicyholders.com, but a lot of information. So please avail yourselves of that. And again, if it's just overwhelming to dive into that, give one of us a call with your question. That's what we're here for. So thank you all for being here. I've attended the first workshop and was so impressed, and I'm glad we could hold it again. And thank you, Amy and Dan and crew, for being here.
All right. Well, it really is what we're about is empowering people who have bought insurance, who now need it to work for them. That's really what our organization is about. But tonight is the subject matter that we're covering it's related to insurance, because in order to make the financial decisions that you are grappling with now in the aftermath of your loss, obviously your insurance is a big part of that. Figuring out how much insurance you're going to be getting and when you're going to be getting it, and what restrictions there will be on your ability to use those benefits. So tonight we're going to be talking about some of these financial questions after what I say California disaster specifically, because if you're going to lose a home in a wildfire, California is the best place to do it, because we have a lot of protections in place. We have a lot of rules. And one of them is in statute, and there's only 2 states that give you that right, is the ability to buy a replacement home instead of rebuilding, but still access all your insurance monies, right? There's only us and Colorado. And our organization helped get that law passed here and in Colorado. And if I rebuild, what size home makes the most sense, right? Hardly anyone ever rebuilds the exact same size home that they lost. Very, very rare. What's going to happen to the value of my property? How does this catastrophe impact my retirement plans, my budget, college, future plans? When and how much insurance benefits will I collect? And again, a lot of folks who are underinsured on their dwelling try to use some of their contents money or even other pockets of coverage toward their dwelling. And again, that's one of those areas that sometimes people need some advocacy help to get their insurance company to agree to let them be flexible with applying benefits. But generally, these are the questions, right? And then what are my options for financing repair and replacement costs not covered by insurance? And Mike will be going over your income tax strategies a little later on. Okay, next. So to do. So again, why is United Policyholders hosting this event that's focused tonight on financial decision making other than insurance? It's because we know that maxing out your insurance benefits is so important. And that's where a lot of our expertise lies. So what we say, here are your 3 big to-dos that we're here to talk about tonight. Document what it would cost to replace as was built the house that was destroyed or damaged, including all trades. That means drywall, roofing, subcontractor, HVAC, all of it, foundation, etc., including code compliance, as if you were going to put that house back, right? Everything that the county would require you to do to get it to pass for a permit. Oversight, meaning supervision costs, bonds, whatever taxes would be involved, again, in this hypothetical project, right? And why do we talk about this so much? It's because that is the best way to max out your benefits, and it's not always the way that insurance adjusters will try to settle your claim. Very often, they will just do a very quick Xactimate estimate or a computer-based estimate, spits out a nice, fancy-looking, big, thick estimate. But as we always say, computers don't build houses, builders do. So your local tradespeople may look at that number that the computer spit out and say, there's no way I could put this house back for that amount. And so we're here to give you some of those touch points to make sure that you don't leave money on the table because of the way that insurance adjusters typically will try to take the shortcut, but it actually takes some work to figure out what it would cost to put that house back, and that's what you're entitled to. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, figuring out the total insurance benefits that are available, which we've talked about in previous workshops. Number 3, gather info until you can make an educated, thoughtful decision on rebuilding, selling, staying, moving, accepting an insurance settlement, litigating, all those things, right? And that's what we're here for tonight. So Joel Woucher, if I could just bring you up for a second. One of the ways that United Policyholders helps people on the road to recovery is through our partnerships. We have a great relationship most of the time with the California Department of Insurance. And recently, they have been having to make some public pronouncements on your behalf to light a fire under insurers to comply with some of the rules and protections that I was referencing earlier. So Joel, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Amy. I'll just mention sometimes these worst of events bring out the best of people. Some of those best of people, I think, are these people from United Policyholders that show up for these events here, cross country, down south, and so we welcome the opportunity to come and join with them for these events. I have learned so much from Amy's presentations myself. I've sat with Dan while he speaks one-on-one with claimants, and they're wonderful, knowledgeable people, so we're happy to join in. You know, the other thing, it brings out the best in your local officials have been terrific. There are a lot of pieces of legislation hoping to make this type of situation better down the road. I don't know if any of these are going to end up being retroactive, but these events kind of amplify where there are issues, and your elected officials have stepped up to carry a lot of legislation. Your county officials have been fantastic. Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, Sonoma County, and Napa County. Terrific people working, doing something they never thought they'd be doing during their term, and really putting their heart in it. So we've seen so much good. Now, sometimes these events bring out the best and worst in claims adjusters as well, and I'm hoping you're getting the best, but I know probably some of you feel like you're getting the worst. And if that is happening, of course, United policyholders can help you, but you see we have some information up here. There's our toll-free number, or there's our website, insurance.ca.gov. You can contact the Department of Insurance. It's free assistance for you. You can work with them through the claims process. You'll be assigned one of our staff in our Claims Services Bureau if that's what you want to do. Companies don't retaliate just because you went to the Department of Insurance. That doesn't serve to benefit them in the end, right? They want to keep everything looking very diplomatic and professional when the department gets involved. It doesn't mean that we can make everything go super smoothly, but we will be there to help you walk through the process, through the communications back and forth. A lot of what we are doing is enforcing the Fair Claims Settlement regulations that are about responding back and forth between the adjuster and you, and supporting decisions they're making in terms of values, and making sure they are explaining the policy in a fair and forthright manner. So you're welcome to contact us, get our assistance. You can submit a request for assistance. Again, it's free, that magic word. And I hope you'll make use of it. I mean, that's why we're there as well. So again, thanks to all the volunteers and people from United Policyholders. I'll take questions later. You can come up to me while I'm here, but really hope that this is helpful for you. And I hope the Department of Insurance can help you if you need it as well.
Thanks, Joel. And again, it does warm my heart to have, all these folks who are in government really showing their hearts and minds at the same time. So, what are some of the professional experts that you may be needing? A rebuild cost estimator, somebody to help with personal property valuation. By the way, how many of you have had your insurance company say they would pay you some of your personal property money without an inventory? Show of hands. Okay, good. Now I know we had one gentleman earlier before we started say that he had requested the copies of estimates in his claim file, and his insurance company said no. So he's going to be filing a request for assistance with the department. Show of hands, has anybody requested claim-related documents, estimates, and had their insurance company say no? Okay. I would suggest again that you...
I was told that you were entitled to everything that was in your file.
Well, you are in the statute, all claim-related documents. The only loophole for them is attorney-client privilege documents, but again, that shouldn't prevent them from turning over all their measurements and estimates and that sort of thing. Okay, wealth advisors, that's another expert that you may be needing and looking for. If you haven't worked with one in the past, the CFP, they generally charge on one of two bases. They either charge on a percentage basis of your assets under management, or they will charge on a flat fee, an annual fee. CPAs, we very much recommend that if you had been somebody who used TurboTax or you did your own taxes, this would not be the year to do that. We really encourage you to take advantage of the expertise of somebody like Mike. There's also a gentleman in your community, I understand, who lost his home and is a CPA. And again, there's no substitute for somebody who has the professional expertise in income tax filing strategies, but also the casualty loss piece, because it's very specific in terms of being able to go back and amend prior returns. Plus, of course, we just had a tax bill passed, so there are some things that Mike will be touching on tonight that you want to know about. Realtors, very, very valuable, particularly for helping you value the home, the fair rental value if there's an issue for you there of the home you lost. And also, if you're thinking about buying a replacement home, you're going to want documentation from a realtor so that you can do that apples to apples value side by side to max out your benefits toward the purchase of the new home. Attorneys, you've heard there are policyholder attorneys. Those are the people in our family that all the time are reviewing disputes and representing policyholders. We've got some of them volunteering at the clinic. Mortgage brokers can be helpful, and construction lending professionals. Okay. Obviously, most people want to stay. There's something, let's go to the next one. If you don't know about FHA 203H loans, that's something you're going to want to find out about. They're only available to a disaster survivor. Next. Okay, so it is my very great pleasure to introduce Linda Lubitz Boone. Linda goes back a long way with United Policyholders. Let's get her up on the screen. She has this amazing life of going back and forth between, she lives in the two of the most disaster-prone states. So she's half in Florida and half here. So she's got lots of experience to share. And I want to thank you so much for being with us, Linda.
Thank you, Amy. I've known United Policyholders since the Oakland fires when the organization was founded. And I was in Miami, my home, during Hurricane Andrew, which was in 1992, which I believe was the year after the Oakland fires. And I met Amy and the other founder of United Policyholders through my connection here in Oakland, who now is my husband. And it's an amazing group of people. The volunteer efforts are phenomenal. They will do everything in their power to help educate people during a time when we are most stressed. I was very fortunate. I did not lose my home. I had a lot of damage. But I'm a certified financial planner. I have my own business, and I had easily a dozen clients who went back to their homes, and their homes were splinters. Different kind of disaster than y'all had. And so I spent a lot of time with United Policyholders giving speeches to thousands of people. Amy called me, and I'm very pleased to be able to share some of my experience with y'all. Two things that I hope you will take away from tonight that I learned the hard way, because I want things fixed. I want to give people answers to their problems. I'm a fixer. I love problems. I love giving solutions. And I'm not going to be able to give you a solution tonight because everybody has different situations. But what I want to do is give you some resources, give you some guidance, let you know that as difficult as it is now, it will be over one day. Doesn't seem like it. And I will share with you something that you may not want to hear, but I think it's important for you to understand the reality. We had a town in South Florida that was devastated by Hurricane Andrew. It's taken 20 years to get back to where it was. So have patience. The difficult thing to realize is your lives will never be the same. Don't ever expect to go back and have your life be the same. Doesn't mean it has to be worse, but understand it won't be the same. And as soon as you can emotionally deal with that, the sooner you'll be able to recover and take positive steps. Again, doesn't mean your life's going to be worse, but you can't ever go back to the way it was. And it will take a long time. Thank you, Dan. Amy asked me to address a whole bunch of great questions. They're sterling, spot-on questions. Should I buy or rebuild? Well, it depends. If I rebuild, what size home makes most sense? Well, it depends. Each of you is going to have a different answer to this question. What's going to happen to the value of the property? Well, it depends. Probably short term, not so good. Your home value, if you've totally destroyed, you have no home value. I interestingly enough, I don't have a lot of California clients because my husband has a wealth management firm in San Francisco, and I don't want to come out here and poach. But I do have 2 clients in Napa, one of whom had a house up on Montecito Boulevard, I believe, beautiful home overlooking the river. They got an offer. They had their house for sale before the fires. They had an offer to buy not to buy their home. They had their home on the market for a year, couldn't sell it. The fire came, and they got an offer from someone a little bit further north, whose home had been destroyed, to rent it while they were rebuilding their home. And this particular situation, this homeowner has made out better than selling their house. I don't know if you know anybody that has a house still standing. Be aware that people that want to stay in this community might be willing to pay you a very pretty price for the ability to stay in this area. So I imagine most of you are here not because you have your home standing, but if you do know people, be aware that this might be a financial opportunity for them. How is it going to impact my retirement budget or college future plans? It will impact it. Some of you may end up, we've had some experiences in South Florida where people got a lot more for their home than it would have cost to rebuild, and they took the money and they left town. They left. They never wanted to be through another hurricane again. So there is a slight possibility that you'll end up with more money, but chances are you may not. And that will have an impact on your future plans. So I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. Options for financing repair or cost covered by insurance, it depends. How much insurance did you have? How flexible the bank will be in working with you to perhaps modify your loan or other government programs that are available for you. Should I pay down or off my existing mortgage? Well, again, it depends. As you can see, there's no single answer, and hopefully, again, I'm going to help give you some guidance. The first thing that's important is to begin sorting out the pieces necessary for recovery, sort of like a puzzle, to identify what's your facts? What is your financial life like? What was it like before? What's it like now? Hopefully, if you think about putting a puzzle together, what's the most important piece of the puzzle? It's the picture on the cover of the box, isn't it? If you don't know what that picture looks like, how do you know how to begin to put the pieces together? Hopefully, those of you that had a financial plan done before this disaster, you have a picture on the top of the box. Most people don't have a financial plan, so it's going to be a little bit harder. The other thing that I want you to be aware of, and again, I'm sounding really like a Debbie Downer, and I don't mean to be, but having lived through this, it's tough. You have another job now, whether you want it or not, and you need to treat this recovery period as having another job. It will consume time, it will consume energy, it will consume your money, and you're going to have to go through a period where you're going to have 2 jobs. And again, I'm going to try to give you some hints on how to make that a little easier. There is United Policyholders has great resources, but there is one, and all these slides are going to be uploaded, so there's a lot of information. I'm not going to go through all of it because I don't have enough time, but there's a wonderful booklet that I think is just the best I've ever seen, that I found out after Amy said, would you like to speak, and I just scurried and put something together for you. It's called Recovery After Disaster, the Family Financial Toolkit. And I have the website where you can download it at the end. I strongly advise download it. It is a compendium of amazing financial information. And again, the website will be on the last slide. So, what do you have to do? You have to start out with identifying where you are financially. Basically 3 things, and if you've not done this before, this is a great opportunity to start developing good financial habits right now. The first is identify what are your sources of income. Where are you getting your money? If you have Social Security, if you have pensions, if you have work, wherever, part-time jobs, whatever it happens to be, you need to identify the family sources of income. Then you have to do what no one likes to do. At least my husband loves to do it. I'm not going to say no one. He's every day with Quicken downloading our expenses and things. But people generally don't like to identify where they spend their money. You know, money's got emotion with it. It has guilt, it has joy, it has all sorts of things. And most people want to avoid money. You cannot avoid money now. Your future depends on how much attention you pay to your financial situation. And you have to find out where you spend your money. I've got some tips for you on that. Then you have to determine your net worth. We'll talk about that in a minute. And lastly, you have to review your credit report. If you've never done a budget, there's the B word, nobody likes budget. If you've never done a budget before, you may not know where to begin. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And what you need to do is identify what your spending was before the fire. And as I was looking at my title is, after the fire, I realized there were fires. There wasn't just one fire, which made this even worse. So you need to identify where you were spending your money before. Those of us that use credit cards a lot may not be aware that you can contact your credit card company, and generally you can get them to send you an annual summary of your spending by category. I know Bank of America does this, I know American Express, so if you didn't keep records, this is a good place to start. It's February, the 12-month annual expenses will be there. Some of the banks, I know I bank with Bank of America, you can set up a way that they will track where your checks go to, so it doesn't have to be terrible, but you do need to go through that effort, because if you're going to be going to your bank or another bank to ask them to modify a loan or to give you a loan for a new home, you're going to have to give them all this information anyway. Again, sample monthly budget and the spending plan is in the toolkit, that financial family toolkit I spoke about. Another great way to keep track of where your money is going is with Quicken or online with an application called Mint, M-I-N-T. It's very easy, and I know a lot of people are wary of putting their financial information on the internet, and I'm wary as well. But most of these online tools are read-only, meaning that if someone were to get into them, they cannot access your bank accounts or your credit cards through them. Mint and Quicken, every day you can download your transactions, you can organize them as you like, and you can begin to track where your money is going. And if you haven't done this in the past, Mint is free, Quicken does have a cost. I strongly suggest you do that. It's February, it's the beginning of the year. You can start now and begin building a history of where your money is going. Here's just a sample. Again, this is going to be uploaded and is in the family toolkit. I know you can't read it, but basically to talk about and identify your expenses before the fires, what you anticipate your expenses are going to be in your new normal, your new reality. You may not have them all right now. You may need to wait until you figure out what you're going to do with your home, but your basic fixed expenses outside of mortgage and housing, your clothing, your school supplies, your food, those are things that probably won't change, and you can use those as a foundation to begin building what your expenses are going to be. Next, you've identified what's coming in, what's going out. The next thing you have to look at is what are you worth? And chances are, now you might be worth less than before you lost your home. And that's to be expected. What you do to determine your net worth, and some of you may already do this, and this may be repetitive, but I hope you'll bear with me for some of those of you who've not done this before. Basically what you do is you list everything you own. You identify your bank accounts, about how much you have in them. You identify your investment accounts. You identify the value of your land if you have lost your total home. Your land has value. If you don't want to rebuild, someone very well may want to and pay you a lot for that land. Napa is beautiful. People will want to come back and live here, and some people may want to leave. List all the debts that you have, credit card debts, mortgage debt. You will be responsible for repaying the mortgage, whether you rebuild or not. You do owe the bank or whoever has given you that loan. One of the great things about credit reports, there are a lot of bad things, but one of the great things about the credit bureaus is you can get a free copy of your credit report. And if you don't remember all the credit cards that you had, or the loans that you had, most people remember their loans, but a lot of credit cards that you've opened up and all the records were destroyed in the fire, get your free credit report and it will list every single credit card that you have opened or have closed. So, where you can contact the credit card company. So the credit report, I've got the information on how to access it, is a wonderful resource for beginning to reconstruct your financial life. You identify what you own, subtract what you owe, and that is what is considered your net worth. Knowing how much net worth you have can help you identify whether you are in the position to borrow more money if you want to rebuild a home that's a greater value than the insurance proceeds that you're going to get. Again, in the handouts, a little summary of the things that are included in the net worth statement. I know you're not going to be able to read this, but hopefully you'll get them from the website. Strategies to consider after you know your net worth. Think about any assets that are completely paid for that you may not need anymore. Do you have a car, an extra car? Maybe one of your children has left, or one of your children can start to pay for their own car. Maybe you can sell a car. Do you have any other kinds of items that you were able to take if your home is totally destroyed that you might be able to sell? If you weren't totally destroyed, maybe there's a coin collection or something that you have that you can, now may be a time that you can sell it to raise some cash. If you have assets that aren't completely paid for, cars, for example, see if you can sell them to help repay those debts and not have an extra debt payment that right now may not be affordable for you. A lot of people ask, gee, should I cash in my 401k? I need the money, should I cash it in? That is a source of funds for people. It's very important to understand the financial implications of cashing in a retirement account. If you're under the age of 59 and a half, there's a 10% penalty on the amount that you withdraw. And every penny that you take out is subject to ordinary income tax. So that's probably not the best place, but if it's the only place, that's a resource for you. Some 401k plans will allow you to borrow against the money that you have in the 401k retirement plan. That's a lot better than taking the money out and paying the penalty if you're under 59 and a half, or paying the income tax that's due. Next, Dan, please. Credit report, as I said before, this is a wonderful way to identify if you lost most of your financial records. Again, I don't need to repeat this. You can get a credit report once a year from each of the 3 credit bureaus for free. You do not have to pay for your credit report. If you go online and you end up in a website that says, oh, for $10 or $50 you can get your credit report, don't do that. You don't have to. That's money down the drain. So you just go to www.annualcreditreport.com or call the number there and they can tell you how to do it. Okay, I'm sorry, this slide's a little hard to read, but the thing that y'all are probably wrestling most with is, where am I going to live? How many of y'all are in temporary housing in this area? Pretty much everybody. The current house, one of the things that we experienced in Florida after Hurricane Andrew was housing reconstruction costs skyrocketed. Pretty much all of us lost our roofs. My roof is gone. Just gone. Had to be totally retiled. We have Spanish barrel tile. And the cost to replace it, and we had to do, I lived in a community, we had to do it quickly. It was double what we had saved for as a community. And anybody remember the movie Deliverance with the guys that were on the river? We had guys from Virginia and West Virginia, and my family's from Virginia, so I can say, come down, and they did not do good work. So be aware that if you decide to rebuild now, chances are it's going to cost you a lot more than if you can afford to wait a while. If you have temporary housing that you can live in for a year, and kind of let the dust settle a little bit and let housing construction material costs in this area drop down a little bit, you may end up being financially better off than rushing to replace now. And as importantly, I don't know if this is happening here, but we had just this huge influx of construction workers from around the country coming in to make a quick buck. And the quality of their work was not great. So be very aware if you decide to rebuild now, it is critical that you can find a good general contractor with people who will give you warranties. And sometimes that's hard to do when there's a shortage of good construction people, but you need to try. This is a sort of a flow chart. Again, I don't expect you to read it, I'm sorry, but it is in the material that'll be uploaded. Basically, it's a decision tree of where will I live? And it's to determine, do you want to stay here? Do you want to move? If you sort of follow this little question tree down, it can help you and your family think about the questions that you need to be thinking about. If you're close to retirement, and this isn't an area that you want to stay, maybe this is a great time to leave and go move near your grandkids. If you're just starting out, maybe you don't move up to the bigger starter house that you planned to, because you realize I can still live where I am now. And I can save some money so that I'll be more able to financially afford a house rather than buying a house that's too big for you and you can't really afford. So you need to take a breath and think about not just next year, but think about 5 years down the road. Think about 10 years, because it's probably going to take you 5 years just to get settled again. And if you are thinking about someplace else after 5 years, don't rebuild necessarily and start thinking about where you want to go. What if I have a mortgage and my house burns down? Well, any experiences that y'all have had that you might want to share with working with your financial institution and your mortgages? Hopefully the banks here are being a bit more considerate. They weren't that way in Florida. It was the first really bad hurricane we'd had in years, and we didn't have the support that you have in your civic leaders. I'm awed by what y'all are doing, because y'all have no idea how lucky you are that you've got the government resources on your side. Typically, one of the things that you can do is try to reach out to your bank to renegotiate or modify the loan. In recent disasters in Florida, we've had some of the banks, mostly the community banks, not the big Bank Americas of the world, modify the loan to where you just pay interest only for a period of time. Probably the banks aren't going to offer that as a suggestion, but there are a lot of things that you can ask them. And I'm going to give Amy a sheet with sort of a list of all of the kinds of things that you can ask your bank to do to modify or extend your loan for you. Let's see. If you want to rebuild, Amy talked a little bit about this before, and the insurance people, you need to really understand what the costs are, find good contractors, and again, you might consider delaying rebuilding until things get a little bit cheaper. If you don't want to rebuild, the insurer will generally pay the actual cash value of the house. The check will be payable to both you and the bank, whoever holds the mortgage, so you need to be establishing a very good relationship with them so they can release the funds as you rebuild or not. Next, Dan. Coming up, last two slides. Beware if somebody offers you a buyback or lease-to-own options. The scum of the earth comes out after disasters. Hopefully none of you will have to deal with them. Offers to provide you with just give me the key, walk away, you'll be made whole. Those are general scams. Anybody, don't give your social security number to anybody. It's really important. Identity theft is becoming paramount. It's a virus today. Importance of documentation, keep a claims diary, keep a inventory as Amy talked about. And what needs to be done now, if you can insure to the max, get the right type of insurance next time if you didn't get the right kind now. Again, make a record. There's another personal property pricing tool, but United Policyholders has one, so I suggest you use that. And lastly, financial planners, certified financial planners are wonderful people that are trained in working with individuals in their financial affairs. Here is a list of resources to identify people. And lastly, I think, resources. Here's where you can get the Family Financial Toolkit. FEMA, I don't know if FEMA is still in the county. They've already left Florida after our last hurricane. And again, the personal property pricing tool. Hope I've given you some resources, given you some things to think about, some real life experiences. Have patience. Know that this will end one day and that you can come out of this better, but you will be different. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Linda. We are going to have Mike Musson go over some considerations for your income tax filing, your 2017 return, and then looking forward. And so he's going to speak till about 7:30, and then we will open up for questions to either Joel or myself or Mike. And if there is anybody left here from the county as well. So, Mike, you ready to go? Yep. Take it away.
Sorry for everybody's loss. Going through the same thing, became an insurance expert just like you. I expanded my tax resume, my tax resume too. So, and by the way, I'd like to mention I grew up here, 82, class of 82 from Vintage High, so I know the town. It's changed quite a bit. It's a lot different. So yeah, keep going. We're going to fly through some of this stuff. Some of it isn't applicable to you. I do want to mention some of it in case some of you are business owners, for instance, and things like that. So at least give you some ideas of what's out there. We'll cover what I think is most pertinent to a homeowner. Okay. So disaster relief. They did give us extensions of time related to the federally declared disaster. Your January 15th estimate payment was due in January 31st and things like that. Interestingly enough, there is no protocol in a disaster. So things that you hear about literally happen after the disaster. There's no protocol to get rid of the AGI limitation on a casualty loss. So each of these things has to be declared individually by disaster, which is sort of interesting. Let's flip. We are going to, as I mentioned, we are going to just touch very quickly on business. This applies to all these counties that have been affected, and I'm sure you know it. There's a couple things I want you to sort of stick in your brain as I talk. One of them is we're going to talk about things like personal property, insurance money that is not taxable in this federally declared disaster, period. However, when I'll be talking about calculating gains and losses, potentially in the calculation of a loss, we would have to include something that wasn't otherwise taxable. So I'll try to be as clear as I can when we talk about that. I want you to think about something else, basis. So you go out and buy 100 shares of Intel stock and you pay $1,000 for it. That is your cost basis. So that when you sell it for $5,000 down the road, you have a $4,000 gain. Does everybody see that? I want you to think about the cost basis of your house. It's not how much it's worth. It was how much you bought it or built it for. Improvements including landscape, decks, fence, blah, blah, pool, whatever. How much did you pay for your house? So you want to flip? A couple of things. I think somebody just mentioned this. One of the significant items about the federally declared disaster is if you have a loss, in other words, your insurance money is less than the basis of your house, for instance. So you're recovering less than the cost basis of your house, you may have a loss. That loss potentially could be taken in 16 as well as 17. 17 being the year that the casualty occurred. Federally declared disaster allows us to throw it back to 16. Likely as not, you're going to have to calculate 17 before you figure out whether your loss is better taken in 17 or 16, right? I wouldn't be in a hurry per se to file your tax return, okay? It may take an extension, okay, to figure this out. There's a couple of things that have changed very recently, by the way. So in these slides, you may have seen, in fact, the bottom of that last slide mentioned something about the AGI limitation. That does not apply anymore. In February 9th, the Bipartisan Act of something or other of 2018 was passed. And it extended certain provisions. It also added quite a bit of casualty-related California disaster-related provisions. One of them was to do away with a 10% AGI floor in the casualty loss calc. And that'll become a little more apparent in a second. We're going to go through some numbers, okay? By the way, I hate just caught AGI is, oh, thank you for mentioning that. As a CPA, I do this all day, done it, went to school for 4 years and have done it for 30. So I say things and I don't realize that I'm talking to people, I might as well be from Mars, right? So AGI is adjusted gross income, and it's the bottom of page 1 of 1040, okay? Much, but not much. Things like medical deductions, things like miscellaneous itemized deductions are subject to limitations based on that number, a percentage of that number. A couple of very important things. So essentially we've got 3 buckets of money. Building, personal property, and living expenses. In a federally declared disaster, don't worry about getting taxed on personal property settlement in excess of what your basis was. So if you had $300,000 worth of personal property and they gave you $1 million, in theory it's not taxable, okay? Living expenses, the same thing. Okay, if you're getting rent, $15,000 of rent a month, don't worry about getting taxed on it. It's just not taxable, period. Okay, so the only thing we need to worry about is building. Okay, don't forget though that potentially if you get insurance settlement, let's say you're a business and you get insurance settlement for loss of business, loss of use, potentially that's income. They're just trying to replace income, so that's going to get taxed. Missed wage, covering your wages, for instance, things like that. That's going to get taxed. Go ahead. What is a casualty loss? We just had one. Okay. It can't happen all the time. It can't. I don't know. Dry rot is not a disaster, right? And your fence falling down when the wind blows it down is not a disaster. A disaster is something that happens infrequently. When you talk about the definition of a casualty loss for taxes, the casualty must be permanent. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the fire burned one tree on your property. The IRS is going to argue that that's not permanent because trees grow back. Okay? Now, potentially, if you lost all the trees on your 2-acre property, you may have a loss, but it becomes a little tricky. Okay? But just as a concept, it must be permanent. Okay? It can't be a temporary reduction in value. As we mentioned, the loss is when your reimbursements don't add up to your original cost. Potentially you have a loss. Likewise, if you get more than you paid, then you potentially have a gain. Linda mentioned that nobody's in the same boat, right? We all kind of say, oh, we're in the same boat. No, not really, because everybody's got different insurance. Everybody paid different amounts for their house. If you bought your house in 2007, your cost basis in that house is a heck of a lot different than somebody bought it in 72. Okay, so everybody's a little bit different. There is a component of calculating the casualty loss that's related to fair market value, but I wouldn't even start there. I would first look, when I talk to people about this, I ask them, tell me what your basis is, tell me what your cost basis is, tell me how much you're going to get in insurance. And that's the start of a conversation. If we need to push into the fair market value component, we can. Because potentially there's a loss that's calculated as the lesser of the change in fair market value pre and post fire and your basis, basically. Now think about your fair market value pre and post fire. Again, it's got to be a permanent reduction, right? Permanent reduction. Yeah, I think that's probably it. You must file an insurance claim to take a casualty loss. So if you take one and they figure out you didn't file a claim, you won't get it. And I'm sure that's not really the case for any of us. By the way, I'm not normally a lecturer. A conversation's fine. And if you have questions as I'm talking, let's go for it. Okay? Loss substantiation for the IRS is very similar to the stuff you're trying to do for your insurance and like the personal property listing. Okay, so if you're doing it for insurance, it's going to work for taxes, including the proof of loss, for instance, on the cost, all the itemization of your personal property. Perfect. I'll skip. So here's a really, really quick, by the way, I'm flying through this because we don't have tons of time. Here's a quick personal residence casualty calculation. By the way, these slides are going to be up on Amy's, on UP Health's website. You could literally just kind of scratch out the number and put in your number and kind of get a number. You could do these calcs yourself, okay? So basis of the totally destroyed home, less insurance reimbursements. FEMA's never given anybody $50,000 as far as I know. Sorry, that was kind of a joke. So your lots, can you see that basically it's very economic, is it not? Right, we bought it for 200, we got we bought it for 300, we got 200, we have a loss. It's just that simple, okay? Remember when I said on February 9th, the Congress created a bill and the president signed it, there's no longer a less 10% of AGI. Basically, the loss is 50K now. It's not 39.9. Go ahead and flip it. So, I'm just gonna, anybody familiar with Section 1031? Okay, somebody, see, I knew it. So there's this issue, or this concept, if you will, in the code. I'm not saying that the code's perfect, it's not. But there are some very economic things that go on. So if you look at the code in 1031, what it basically does is, I had a piece of property, I had a piece of real estate, I sold it, and now I used the proceeds and bought another piece of property. So I have real estate now, it's another piece of property, but it's still real estate. I don't have any cash anymore. Okay, so if I had a gain on the sale of this first piece, I no longer have the ability to pay the taxes on it. Does everybody understand that? So they allow you to roll the gain over. And basically what happens is your basis in that original house becomes the basis in your new house. Your gain is effectively deferred. It's not magic too. If you did the numbers, which we're about to do, go ahead and roll it over. This is a basis calc in a loss situation, okay? So you basically get carryover basis plus whatever you spend, and then, in addition to whatever that was. So again, you can plug these you can plug your own numbers in here if you like. I think that's probably it. Okay, so that was a loss. Okay, it's as simple as we had $300,000 invested. If we get $200,000 worth of insurance money, we have a $100,000 loss. Well, what if it's the other way around? There's something called involuntary conversion. That's that 1031 thing I was talking about. Involuntary conversion doesn't sound very comfortable, and this is what happened to us. Right? We effectively sold our houses, right, in the fire, and we sold them for insurance proceeds. So really the tax law looks at it just like we sold it to a third party. So it's not that complicated really at that point, right? Gains in an involuntary conversion, much like a 1031, if we use the proceeds to replace our property, we're going to be able to probably defer that gain, okay? Does that make sense? If we get more money than we had spent and we reinvest it, we won't have any gain to report. Why? Because it's all in our new property. Does that make any sense? Okay. If you walk away with cash, after all this is said and done, you're probably going to have some taxes, okay? The IRS isn't, they're friendly, but they're not that friendly, right? So think about that. If in this process you end up with some excess building-related insurance proceeds, i.e. supplemental structure, trees, stuff like that, if you end up monetizing your old house, you're going to have some taxes potentially. So, actually, can you back that up? Sorry, I didn't catch that. Don't forget, unless it was a rental or a business property, if it was your personal residence, there's the personal residence exclusion, okay? So some of you probably remember there was a rollover provision and all this stuff. Well now, if you lived in the house 2 out of the last 5 years, okay, and you're single, you can exclude $250,000 worth of gain. If you're married, you can exclude $500,000 worth of gain. Okay, this is a powerful thing, all right? You could literally not reinvest $500,000 potentially, walk away with $500,000, reinvest the balance into a new home, and you wouldn't get taxed because of the exclusion, okay? By the way, I know you're not going to get all this, right? But I want you to be able to say, right? Hey, casualty losses, generally speaking, you need to do within 2 years, generally speaking. In a federally declared disaster, we get 4, okay? And you'll get more if you ask. If you're in the process of rebuilding, you write a letter to the IRS, you're going to get more. You get more time, okay? And the idea is that we're trying to preserve the deferral. If we do have a gain, we've experienced a gain, and we're trying to replace that property, we have time, they want to give us enough time to spend that money. Realizing that, for instance, how many houses a year can they actually build, right? So 3,000, 5,000 houses or structures, how are we going to get all that built in 2 years? Well, it's not going to happen. But one of the reasons Amy mentioned that you need to get somebody to help you with the return is if you do have a gain, an involuntary conversion gain, you need to disclose it. There's a statement that you put in. It's very simple, by the way. It's not very complicated, but you got to put it in there. And it's not that it would destroy you if you didn't do it. It's just really, really good to do it, right? Because if you have to go back to 2017 and figure out these numbers 3 or 4 years from now, that's going to be a pain. So you might as well memorialize it now. Do the calcs, maybe even attach it to the back of your return that you don't even need to do. But I'm going to do it for myself because I want to be able to pick up my 17 return and have one little tiny little package, where I know my loss or my gain, right? You will know, because you're gonna have to guess. So on, you're gonna know your basis. By the way, everyone lost their records, right? So we don't know how much we paid for the house. Well, I mean, maybe you do because it's, assessor knows how much you paid for it originally. But let's say you need significant improvements, things like that. You're not gonna have those records. It's okay. Just guess and be reasonable. Could it rise to the level of you having to get your friends to sign an affidavit, that says, yes, I had this deck, right? It might come to that, so be reasonable in your estimates, but, you got to estimate, that's all we can do. And likewise, in your question, at some point or another, when we file 17's tax return, we've got to estimate what the insurance is, even if we don't know it. We've got to estimate what we think the deferred gain is. By the way, and let's say, in 18, if we have a better estimate, we can augment, that statement and say, oh, the gain's going to be X, it's not Y, right? So we're going to have to guess, because we will have to disclose. Or I would suggest disclosing, again, so you don't lose the trail, so that you have this kind of, 3 years from now, you're going to want to know how much you deferred, right? And by the way, I very much disagree that your personal residence goes in your balance sheet, because it's not an investment. It's not. Can you treat, your investment, you should be able to sell tomorrow. Can you sell your, assuming we had one, could you sell your personal residence tomorrow? And the answer is no. We have kids in school, we have all our crap in there. We're not gonna sell it. So you don't, saying that we lost $100,000 because of the fire, I don't agree with that, because it was never there. We never were gonna sell our house. I'm not, right then, you know what I mean? So the fact that it was worth $700,000 or whatever is useless. It's nothing, yeah. So, but what, I'm gonna kind of turn your question around. If you have a gain, you have a gain. Just pay the taxes, and have a good time.
It'd be a lot of taxes.
Well, I don't disagree with you. And by the way, this is not a political statement, but too many of us worry about not paying taxes, and you end up in the gutter. You make money, you pay taxes. I'm happy to pay my 40 cents on the dollar, whatever I pay. The more I make, the more taxes I pay. I'm fine. And so if you make a bunch of money on your house, it's fine. You came out way ahead. Don't be afraid of taxes, by the way. I think somebody screwed this up a long time ago, and taxes became this big horrible thing. Frankly, I would pay $1 million in taxes right now. Where do I sign? Why would I do that? Because I'd have $2 million left over. Would any of us do that? Every one of us would raise our hand, right? So how did we get to this point where everybody's afraid of paying taxes? A little calc, and kind of calking what kind of the things we were talking about. Insurance proceeds, less the basis, realized gain, talked about the personal residence exclusion, more proceeds realized, less basis, our gain, $275,000 reinvested in a new house. We're going to pay some gain. We don't reinvest our whole proceeds. We do pay some gain because we monetize some of our house. When we talk about the proceeds, it's just on the building, right? When we talk about the cost basis, we've got to take the cost basis of the land out. So let's say we bought the house for $500,000. On the original assessor's bill, it might have taken out $150,000 for land. We still have that land, we still have that cost basis. So really the cost basis in the building we lost is $350,000, right? And by the way, the IRS will probably go to the assessor's records to figure out what the land is, because they really don't have any other basis to do it. So if you disagree with it, you better figure out a way to prove it that the assessor was wrong, right? Because that's where the IRS will go. I'm going to skip through the business stuff. If you have a question, I'm you know, as everybody else, I'm on the internet. So if you look up Mike Musson CPA Santa Rosa, I'll pop up. If you have a question, give me a call on the business stuff. But a lot of it's basically the same, other than personal properties, not, you know, there's no pass on that one. Potentially, if you have personal property, proceeds in excess of basis, you've got gain. Just really quick, Amy. So just some really some stuff that just passed, and there's some slides here. And again, this slide deck will be up on the website. But there is some relief from early withdrawal on from your retirement plans, kind of what Linda alluded to. But you know, there's a $50,000 loan. Technically, there's a $50,000 loan limitation for 401k. Now it's 100 under this thing. We can spread out the gain on a distribution from a 401k, for instance, over 3 years. Potentially, we can avoid the penalty, you know, if you are less than 59.5, if it's related to a distribution, you know, to mediate casualty loss. There's a charitable contribution limitation. Yeah, some of this stuff. So, you know, you can look up some of this stuff on the internet as well. Again, just so that you know some of this stuff's out here. There's actually an employee retention credit for those of you with businesses, and if you're curious, just kind of Google it. Anyways, I don't know if you just want to address the question.
Actually, what I want to do, you can hang on to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. Really, really, really excellent. Before we get into any more questions, I wanted to invite Supervisor Alfredo Pedroza to just come up for a minute. Another one of your elected officials who is reached out to our organization to say, let's work together to provide education, information, support. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you everyone for being here today. I know you've heard from two of my colleagues, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. You know, the main objective for us is to be here for you. You know, we've made some great success on the road to recovery. We've done some great things in getting to this point in terms of how many properties we've cleaned up, over 400. But this is just the beginning, and I kind of came in on the tail end. And all of you have some important decisions to make. And what we've tried to do is give you as much information as you can, so that way you make the best decision for you and your family. Understanding, yes, some of us like to pay taxes a little bit more than others. But we understand that these are life-changing decisions. And there's things that we've controlled. We've been working very well with the federal government and state government, but as you transition to determining whether you can rebuild your home, there's a lot of information that you have to digest, and we fully understand that. Whether do you resell your home, do you rebuild, what are the tax implications? And that's important. But also what we've done at the county is try to see what we can do to be there for you. So we've looked at, you know, streamlining our process and what that means to you in cents and dollars, and the possibility of having, you know, fee reductions. We're going to be talking about that at the Board of Supervisors here in the next week or so, looking at what streamlining is going to do and the possibility of having fees being reduced up to 30%. I think some of my colleagues might have talked about the property tax options, and you have, I believe, up to 3 years to determine whether you can rebuild or whether you can carry over your base year into a new property. Building has talked about, you know, giving you up to 120% to rebuild your home in terms of square footage. So we've tried to be as flexible as we can to understand the severity of the situation. This was a historic event for Napa County, and it's going to take a while to rebuild. But I think the message I just want to provide to every single one of you is we're in it together. We're here for you. We've staffed up where we need to make sure that we can rebuild. We can process permits as quickly as possible. We've already processed, I believe, 1 or 2 permits at the county of Napa to get you back into your home. And that objective of getting you back in your home as quickly as possible is a shared objective with County of Napa. And again, there's a lot of things that we're going to learn. We haven't done this before. And if I ask you, raise your hand if you rebuilt a home. Raise your hand. There's a few. And that's something that we need to make sure that we're ready for at the county of Napa to make sure we can process your permits efficiently, but also provide information so that way you can make decisions. If you have questions, by all means, reach out to the county of Napa. We have some great resources on the website, but also as your supervisors, allow us to help you as well to make sure we're connecting you with the right resources so that way you make sure you have the right information. At the end of the day, we work for you. Some of us got evacuated, so we know a sliver of the impact that you guys are going through, but this is our community, and we hope that we can get there, rebuild better, smarter. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you to United policyholders for convening these type of meetings. This is exactly what we should be doing so that way we have good information for our constituents. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we've just got a few more minutes. We've still got Joel Loucher here from the Department of Insurance. We've got Mike Musson, CPA, and you've got me, lawyer, insurance, consumer advocate, troublemaker. I did want to say that if you, I was very sad to see how few hands went up when I asked you whether you got an email about tonight, because obviously our objective is to get information to you. So chances are good that you may have a spam filter that's catching our emails. So please make sure to put, if you know how to put uphelp.org as an approved sender, do that. If anyone has any other tips on how to do that, speak up. But so questions?